Welcome back. Ready to dive into some seriously thought-provoking territory? We're tackling one of those philosophers who tends to either inspire awe or make people run for the hills, Friedrich Nietzsche.
He certainly doesn't inspire indifference, does he?
Not one bit. And I know you're not here for a surface-level skim. You sent us a whole stack of articles on Nietzsche.
Quite a few, yes.
So let's see if we can unearth those aha moments, the kind of stuff that makes you see the world a little differently. Where should we even begin with a mind like Nietzsche's?
Well, he is infamous for declaring that God is dead.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps that's a good starting point for our deep dive.
Right, and just to clarify, he wasn't suggesting a celestial graveyard somewhere.
No, not at all.
It's more about the impact of fading religious belief, isn't it?
Exactly. Nietzsche was writing during a time when traditional Christian faith, particularly among intellectuals, was on the decline. Imagine a society where God is considered the ultimate authority on morality, meaning the whole shebang. Now picture that authority figure fading away. It's not just a shift in belief, it's a seismic shift in the very foundation of society.
That's kind of chilling when you put it that way. So how does nihilism fit into all of this? That term kept popping up in the materials you sent.
Nihilism, at its core, is the feeling that nothing truly matters. No inherent purpose, no grand plan, just existence.
Right.
It's easy to see how that could be terrifying, like losing your moral compass, your sense of direction in the world.
It does make you want to crawl back into bed and pull the covers over your head. But Nietzsche wasn't advocating for despair, was he?
Not at all. He saw nihilism as both a danger and an opportunity. He argued that by acknowledging the abyss, we're then free to create our own meaning. We become creators, as he put it, not just creatures.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. This is where that whole Übermensch concept comes in.
Exactly.
Nietzsche's vision for what humans could become.
Precisely. The Übermensch, often translated as Superman or Overman, isn't about superhuman strength or leaping tall buildings in a single bound, though.
So less about physical prowess and more about a different kind of strength.
Exactly. It's about willpower, about pushing your own personal and creative boundaries. The Übermensch transcends traditional morality, not because they're immoral, but because they create their own values based on what Nietzsche called life affirmation.
So not anarchy, but radical self-authorship.
You could say that, yes.
I'm intrigued, but I do want to address the elephant in the room because when most people hear will to power, particularly given history, it's hard not to think of, well,
The ways in which Nietzsche's ideas, particularly surrounding the goal to power, were tragically misinterpreted and misappropriated by certain groups in the 20th century.
yes. The Nazis, for example. It's a difficult but essential aspect of Nietzsche's legacy to unpack.
Absolutely. It's crucial to understand that Nietzsche himself would have been horrified by this distortion of his work. Remember, he emphasized the individual's role in creating their own values. Blind obedience to a dictator, to any ideology that promotes hate or violence, directly contradicts that. Nietzsche was scathingly critical of nationalism and any form of herd mentality.
So when he talked about the will to power, what did he really mean?
He was advocating for personal growth, pushing your own boundaries intellectually, creatively, spiritually. It's about self-mastery, not dominating others.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So we've covered the death of God and the emergence of the Übermensch. But there's another major Nietzschean concept we need to unpack, eternal recurrence. This one tends to make my head spin a bit, I'll be honest.
Imagine this. What if you had to live your life, every single high and low, every mundane Tuesday meeting, every triumph and heartbreak, exactly the same way for eternity? Would that thought fill you with joy or dread?
A little of both. Honestly, it sounds exhausting, like a cosmic version of Groundhog Day.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? And for Nietzsche, that's precisely the point. This wasn't meant to be taken literally, but as a thought experiment, a test even. Because if you could face the prospect of reliving every single moment of your life without reservation, wouldn't that mean you're living a life you truly find meaningful? A life worth repeating?
That's quite a barometer for self-reflection. If the idea of eternal recurrence makes you cringe, maybe it's time to make some changes.
Precisely. And this ties back to what we were discussing about nihilism. It's easy to feel lost in a world stripped of inherent meaning. But Nietzsche challenges us to create that meaning ourselves, to craft a life we wouldn't want to change, even if faced with the prospect of living it on repeat.
That's a lot of pressure, but also incredibly inspiring. It's like we have agency in this grand cosmic play, even if we didn't write the script. Okay, I need a moment to process all of this.
Take your time. These are weighty concepts.
They really are. So we've covered God's dramatic exit, the rise of the Übermensch, and the eternal recurrence mind-bender. How does all of this play out in a world of instant gratification and social media? What would Nietzsche make of it all?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Picture Nietzsche scrolling through Instagram. What do you think his take would be on the curated personas, the constant need for validation, the echo chambers of agreement?
I think it's safe to say he wouldn't be handing out likes. He'd probably see it as the antithesis of everything he advocated for: individuality, self-creation, embracing difficulty.
Exactly. He'd likely see our modern obsession with comfort and convenience as a form of weakness, a way of avoiding the essential struggles that force us to grow, to become more interesting, more alive.
Okay, but before we all fling our phones into the sea and retreat to mountaintops for solitary contemplation, there has to be a way to find a balance, right? We can't just unplug from the world entirely. I'm picking up what you're putting down, though. It's about being mindful about how we engage with the world around us. Maybe Nietzsche wouldn't necessarily condemn the technology itself, but the uncritical, passive way we tend to use it.
Precisely. It's about being conscious creators, even in the digital realm. Take consumerism, for example. Nietzsche would undoubtedly critique our tendency to seek fulfillment in material possessions. But he also recognized the importance of beauty, of surrounding yourself with things that elevate the spirit.
So it's less about rejecting the material world entirely and more about being intentional with what we choose to bring into our lives.
Exactly. Choose experiences that nourish your soul, not just your Instagram feed. Surround yourself with art that moves you. Seek out knowledge that expands your horizons. This is how we tap into that Nietzschean will to power in a way that aligns with our own values.
I love that it's a much more nuanced and empowering perspective than just reject all material possessions. Going through the listener's notes, there's a quote that really resonated with me. One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star.
Ah, yes. From Thus Spoke Zarathustra, such a powerful image. We often shy away from chaos, from discomfort, but Nietzsche reminds us that it's often those moments of upheaval, those periods of questioning and uncertainty, that true growth occurs.
It's like that old saying, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. It's the challenges, the storms that force us to become more resilient, more capable.
And often more interesting, don't you think? There's a certain beauty in the imperfections, the detours, the unexpected turns on the journey of becoming.
Absolutely. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from the death of God to the birth of the Übermensch and that mind-bending internal recurrence concept. What I'm really curious about now is how this all translates into practical advice. It's one thing to admire the idea of the Übermensch, but how do we actually become more like that in our day-to-day lives? What are some tangible steps we can take?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, Nietzsche wasn't big on handing out step-by-step guides. But sprinkled throughout his work, there are these nuggets of wisdom, these recurring themes that can point us in the right direction.
Like breadcrumbs leading us through the philosophical forest.
Exactly. And I think it all starts with self-awareness, not just a casual glance in the mirror, but a deep, unflinching examination of our own beliefs, values, and motivations. Why do we do the things we do? Are we driven by fear, conformity, or are we acting from a place of genuine purpose, a desire to create something meaningful?
So step one is some serious soul searching. No more autopilot, right?
Exactly. It requires us to challenge those deeply ingrained assumptions, to question the truths we've passively inherited. Nietzsche was wary of any ideology that claimed to have all the answers. He believed that genuine growth stemmed from questioning, from embracing uncertainty and ambiguity.
Which, let's be honest, can be downright uncomfortable. We humans have a knack for clinging to certainty, to those easy answers. It's that old saying, isn't it? The truth will set you free, but first it'll probably make you feel a little uncomfortable.
Exactly. But that discomfort, that willingness to sit with uncertainty, is where the real growth happens. Remember Nietzsche's emphasis on the will to power. He wasn't suggesting we bully our way through life.
Right.
It's about pushing our own boundaries, confronting our limitations, and become the authors of our own lives.
So how do we cultivate that will to power in a healthy way? Does it require a dramatic life overhaul? Do we need to abandon our comfortable routines and seek out constant chaos?
It doesn't have to be about monumental gestures. It can be as simple as trying something new each day, however small. Stepping outside our comfort zones, even in subtle ways, can have a cumulative effect.
So learning a new language, picking up a new hobby, challenging our own perspectives by engaging with different viewpoints, it all counts.
Absolutely. It's about embracing those moments that pull us out of our routines, those experiences that force us to adapt and grow. And beyond that, It's about cultivating a sense of what Nietzsche called amor fati, a love of fate.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty tall order. How do you love something as unpredictable and often messy as fate?
It's not about passive resignation, but a radical acceptance of the totality of our experiences, the highs and the lows, the triumphs and the heartbreaks. It's about seeing all of the good and the bad as fuel for growth.
That's a powerful concept, not just enduring the hard parts of life, but actually embracing them, seeing their value and shaping who we become.
Exactly. Out of that acceptance, out of that chaos, we create something extraordinary. We become the artists of our own lives, not striving for some fixed idea of perfection, but constantly evolving, becoming.
Becoming, I love that. It's so much more dynamic than striving for some static end goal. And, it strikes me that this whole deep dive has been an exercise in becoming. We started with a stack of articles, a desire to understand this often intimidating thinker. And through our conversation, through wrestling with these ideas, we've hopefully come out the other side a little bit different.
Perhaps a little less certain, a little less sure of ourselves, but hopefully a little more awake, a little more attuned to the possibilities.
Absolutely. And isn't that what Nietzsche, at his core, wanted for us? To shake us awake from our philosophical slumber and become the conscious creators of our own lives.
Precisely. So to our listener, as you continue to explore Nietzsche's work, as you grapple with these ideas, ask yourself this: what do you want to become?
And don't be afraid to embrace a little chaos along the way. Who knows what dancing stars you might give birth to? This has been an incredible journey. Until next time, keep diving deep, friends.